So tip number 2 is to build up measure chains. And as we said in the last tip, when we dragged on a column into the values bucket, it creates an implicit measure, and this is not best practice. It's better to explicitly define our calculations. So we can do that by creating measures. So if we go into our finance data, we can see here we've got the amount assigned column, but let's create a measure. So a new measure here, and let's call this total amount and make that the sum of finance data and amount with sign. And now we can use this total amount in here, and it should give us exactly the same values. Yep, and it's just this is exactly what the implicit measure is doing as well, but we've now explicitly said we want to summit this column. And the reason we need to define these explicit measures is because we want to build upon this. So let's go through and look at then where else we can take this. So actually this number doesn't really make any sense, because what we're doing is summing together actuals and budget and all years and all periods. So it's just a big number that doesn't mean anything. So actually we can't sum together actuals and budgets. So let's create a new measure that's going to use that measure. So it's going to say, now let's say total actuals, for example, or actuals equals. So we're going to start with our total amount, but what we want to do is say take the total amount, but only where our scenario is actual. So we need to modify what's called the filter context. So we can do calculate total amount, and here we pass in a filter condition. So if we do dim scenario equals actual. And what this will do is give us our total amount, so the sum of that finance amount with sign, but for where the scenario is actual. So this is then going to give us our actuals, and we can now drag on actuals in here instead, and actually that makes more sense than just total amount. And then the other thing we can do now then is start to again build upon those measures. So we've got our actuals number here, and what we can do is build another measure that says, actually, I want my actuals for each of these GL lines, but I want this time to show it for last year. Now, what we're able to do is do this really simply within Power BI using Time Intelligence. And this is enabled because we have a date table. We have a table that has got all our continuous dates in there, so no gaps in the dates, and all the attributes of those dates, and that's something we can just bring in and use almost in every report that we build. Always best practice to have. And then with the table, we click on here mark as date table. So because we've got those two set up, we can now actually just say calculate. So again, we want to modify the filter context, so give us our actuals, but give it to us for that same period last year. So whatever date that we're looking at in context, so when we select a month or a year, this is going to give us our prior year values. And here it needs to make sure that we've got that date table, that continuous set of dates. So here is where we can just do dim dates date and close bracket. So we're calculating our actuals for the same period last year, and this is our actuals prior year measure. And we can go on and start to build out some other measures that just again build on these. So say our variance to prior year, and that's just going to be our actuals less our actuals prior year. And we can also even just build one called variance to prior year percentage, and here we can do divide our variance to prior year divided by our actuals prior year, and this is going to just give us our variance to prior year percentage. And the idea of building these measure chains is now actually we don't need to show all of the sub calculations that go beneath them. If we want to, we can just show variance to prior year percentage, and let's format that as percentage. So let's click on there, measure tools, click on the percentage icon, and now we can just see the variance to percentage. And actually something like that might be quite good to show, for example, in a bar chart where we can see which ones have the highest, which account lines have the highest variance to percentage, and we can actually sort those by variance to percentage. And we can see, for example, operating centers expenses has the highest variance. But what we'll do here, let's drag on in our income statement, let's drag on all of them. So let's do actuals. We want actuals prior year, and we want variance to prior year and variance to prior year percentage. And one last thing as well, these numbers don't look particularly neat. They don't look like how accountants format their numbers. So what we can do is apply a custom format string to those. So we can actually take these custom format strings from Excel. So if we go into Excel, we have a number. We can click on here, and then in this string here, this is the kind of string that we need to take. So we need to take one that's going to work with Power BI. And then we come back into here, and we can go and select our measures. So in the modeling view now of Power BI, we can hold down Control here, select multiple measures, total amount and variance to prior year. And let's give them all a custom format string. So we do format in here, custom, and enter the format string that we want in there. So let's see if that one, and you'll take it from the PowerPoint deck, write them in there. And now back in Power BI, enter the format string, and now we can see it's formatting them exactly how we want, with no decimal places, with a pound sign and comma, and now this looks much neater.